The City of Charleston is planning how they will reopen the city after the coronavirus outbreak passes. I sit down with Councilman Mike Seekings for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and follow me on social media. Councilman Mike Seekings.
Quintin, how are you?
I'm doing great.
It's actually been a while.
Yes, sir. Welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, you are a Charleston City Council member, a longtime Charleston resident, and of course, you're the chairman of Carter.
All of which has been a great honor.
Who is Mike Seekings right now?
Well, I think like everybody out there in our community and the world, wondering what the future looks like, committed to making sure that we get through this period in our lives and this challenge put out there by COVID-19 in a way that is safe and healthy and thinks about each individual and that we do the best that we can for them. And that's a good place for me to be in a bad time.
Bad time. I know I was watching television yesterday, and I understand that the mayor of Charleston was on MSNBC with Chuck Todd, and he basically says, hey, this is how we're going to roll out a reopening of the city. For right now, we want people to basically conduct, general hygiene and also practice social distancing.
Well, so I like to call it physical distancing. We've been very social through all this, mostly through Zoom and keeping in touch with people, but physical distancing is the answer. And as you know, metrics-driven plans are the way to go. And I agree that I think the future looks like a rollout in stages of the reopening of our community, of our nation, and of the world, basically. But it's got to be based, from my perspective, and I think in the mayor's plan it's there, it's got to be based on science. We've got to be listening to the MDs, the PhDs, people who understand what those numbers look like, because this can't be politically driven. It has to be scientifically driven, and then make good decisions from there. And I agree that that's the way to do it. We came into this probably not metrics-based. We were a little bit behind the curve on the numbers. So now we really need to let the numbers dictate how we roll it back out. And it will be staged for sure. The future is going to look different short and long term. And one of the things I saw in the mayor's plan, I think it's a plan that's driven by the medical community, which is appropriate, is we got to be in a place at some point where we have actual knowledge, and that's testing, right? And who knows where testing is long term. And so I still think we've got some work to do, and we've got to keep listening very closely to those around us who have been looking at this closely every day.
What are you listening to right now, Councilman?
Well, there's a lot of noise out there, right? There's a lot to listen to. I listen very closely to the metrics, to the numbers, to where the numbers are and how the progression has gone, as opposed to prediction in Charleston County, in the region, in our country, and then the medical community. I think the medical community are those who have to drive this. That's their profession. They look at this, the epidemiologists, the people working on the front lines. So that's what's going to drive me, and at the times when we have to make decisions, it has to be made based on good, sound practices in terms of people's health.
What numbers are you looking at currently?
Well, we looked this morning, talked this morning to our emergency management director about both Charleston County and the state, which I was interested in before we actually sat down and chatted about the number of known cases. And I say known cases because, again, right now we're just testing people who show some form of symptom.
Okay.
So the testing isn't 100% a cross-section of the population, but it is a good indicator on where we are, where we're going, and where we've come from. And today, about 4,000 cases tested positive in the state of South Carolina. Of those, 385 in Charleston County. Interestingly, between Friday and today, we're sitting here on a Saturday, the number of new known cases in Charleston County is 2. Again, those numbers you have to be a little bit careful of because of the number of tests we're doing, but still it shows that physical distancing is working, and we need to continue on in that vein.
This is the question that I've been trying to get from everybody recently.
All right.
How many people have recovered from coronavirus, particularly in the city of Charleston?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I can tell you from my perspective, I don't have an absolute empirical number. I can only tell you anecdotally. I live here.
Sure.
I've lived here for a long time. I have a number of friends who run the gamut of professions and age. I do know a number of people who have had this disease, who have had COVID. I know a number of them have recovered. Some it took longer than others. So I do believe the recovery rate is good, but it's not certain. And I don't know that we will ever know for sure the number of people who actually had this and have recovered, because there are some instances that people are asymptomatic. So until you've got an antibody test in a large segment of the population, and I do think that's something, and I hope we work towards that, because we're going to have to learn from this on the backside. And antibody testing is going to tell us a lot of things, one of which is how many people had it in their system and were asymptomatic, how many people had it and got very sick or died, and what those rates were, what it looked like. One of the things we've been talking a lot about in our Health and Wellness Advisory Committee, which is headed by Anton Gunn and Katie Richardson from DHEC, is a great member. It's a really great committee, is we've been talking about health disparities by zip code. And it is, before we even started dealing with COVID and the challenges that it's brought, we saw just in our region huge disparities in access to healthcare and longevity rates by zip code. And this is another chance for us to look at that and make sure that never happens now or in the future. So I think lots of things to be learned from this. But to your original question, I don't think we'll ever know how many people have recovered, because I don't really think we'll ever know how many people actually had this disease until we have complete antibody testing, and that's well down the future, and if it ever happens.
You talk about the region, you talk about access. Obviously, a lot of people have access to Carter.
Right.
What is the state of Carter right now as we sit here?
Well, we're accepting the challenge of providing basic transportation for people who have absolute need to move from one place to another. The message from Carter, the message from everybody out here, and the message I think people are listening to is, unless you positively absolutely have to go somewhere, stay at home. But if it is a necessary, essential trip, if you've got to get to work, if you've got to get to medical care, if you've got to get to the grocery store, Carter is there. We're running on a limited Sunday schedule with some adjustments. We are acutely aware that the health and safety of our drivers and our passengers is number one. When you get on a Carter bus, you'll notice that our drivers have masks and gloves on.
Okay.
We would like for our riders to do the same. We have distanced the drivers from the riders by blocking off the first two rows. Right. We've actually put some shielding in some of the buses, and we're going to continue to do so. Okay. But Carter is out there. It's an essential service. And in the continuum of things that we do in our community, we have to make sure people, if they need to, can get somewhere, and that's what Carter's doing. We've been blessed and lucky. Riders have been very respectful of our drivers and vice versa. We have yet to have, and hopefully will not have, any of our drivers infected. But again, it's a daily process of learning and making sure we're safe.
When the city does reopen, how do you look at the ordinances and processes going forward?
That's a good question, and you know, to me, I think it's a mix of government and ordinance-driven opening and community-driven opening. I mean, we have a community that has had a health problem, but we've got a massive economic issue in our city and our region. The hospitality industry has been gutted. Ironically, the medical industry and the medical business and the medical profession has been hit really hard. So what I think we need to do from a city perspective and from any government perspective is set a framework and a timeline based on science, and then allow those in the sectors to open gradually that meet realistic numbers. And I think the role that government is going to play is what distancing looks like and what numbers look like and how we have large gatherings, if we have large gatherings, and when. And then from that point, I think cooperatively and collaboratively with private business, with the citizenry, make good, sound decisions going forward. And it will be gradual, it will be graded for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Let me get over to some non-coronavirus news.
Right.
Obviously,
hard to believe it's out there, right?
Yes,
but it is.
It is.
I mean, and again, one of the things that we have to be thinking about is the future. I mean, we as a government at the city level, at the county level, the state level, beyond this challenge is a future, and we have to think about what that future looks like, and we have to continue to be vigilant about that.
As a matter of fact, I know the city is very vigilant about, obviously, water. The Army Corps of Engineers has been working on a feasibility study to combat storm surge, among other things, on the Charleston Peninsula. Of course, they released their findings on Monday, and obviously that's a price tag that comes along with that. I know that you're writing an op-ed tomorrow.
I wrote a letter, an informational letter. I mean, it's something I'm acutely interested in. I've been aware of for a long time. The Army Corps of Engineers 3x3 study is a study that identifies a specific geographic area that has challenges with water, in this instance, storm surge, and they spent 3 years and $3 million studying the feasibility of building some protection for the challenges that are faced. And in this instance, the Peninsula of Charleston is the study area. The challenge is the effects of storm surge on our economy, on our life safety, on our health and wellness. And the preliminary, tentatively selected plan is going to be released on Monday. It is centered on the peninsula. It is a barrier system, as we understand it. And I would encourage everybody in our community, once that report is released on Monday, go to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers website, type in Charleston Peninsula Study, and go take a look at this. It is a large-scale, long-term project. It will be expensive for sure, and we're have to share in some of that cost, 35%. So the Army Corps of Engineers study is one of many things that we're going to have to look at going forward when it comes to water, flooding, and water management. And so the more engagement, the better. This has been a internal core study to date. It will now become part of the public realm, and public comment is encouraged.
Encouraged. And
Absolutely.
I know obviously the city will take 35% as far as paying for this particular
Right.
project. What exact amount are we talking?
Well, again, this study has not been published, and I don't want to project and make a guess. That's not our business. Our business is to look analytically at what's delivered to us. Although the Army Corps has talked about certain numbers, it's going to be in the billions of dollars. People need to be prepared for that. How many? Nobody knows. And again, even on Monday, we won't know for sure because it's the tentatively selected plan. There will be public input, further planning going forward for a number of years. This is a long-term study, and it probably is a decade or so before it actually gets implemented. And that's something to think about too. Can we wait that long on the peninsula or other parts of the city? We can't. So how we integrate this study and this plan with Church Creek, with West Ashley, with the challenges on Johns Island, and of course, what the challenges we have on the peninsula, in the medical district, and the like. So it's a big number. I don't want to project until we all see it. I think it's best if we all look at it and then make some decisions, ask some questions, and then we have to participate.
What more questions do you have?
Well, I want to know what this plan is. I mean, what's the routing of the barrier system that they're going to propose? And along the perimeter of the peninsula is where it likely will be. What's the cost of it? How and where are we going to get the money to participate along with the Army Corps in a 65-35 split? Is this the right answer continuously around the peninsula, or do we need to look at other methods? It doesn't need to be a series of projects. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. How does it fit in with the Dutch dialogue? So we've spent an enormous amount of time and money on, and we've adopted unanimously as the policy of the city. So integration, long-term planning with other projects. This is a single project.
Right.
Again, we've got Church Creek, we've got all of West Ashley, we've got Johns Island, the medical district.
Right.
We're working on the low battery.
Right.
We haven't been down and seen that project. It is amazing what they've done down there. It is coming along well and fairly quickly. Hopefully that will keep going. So flooding, when we get on the other side of the challenges that we've got right now with COVID-19, is something that we've dealt with before. We're going to have to deal with in the future. It's important. It's, as many people have said, the number one challenge that we've got going forward for the future, and we have to make sure we do it in an integrated, appropriate way that gives us the best protection that we can have for the challenges that are out there.
How much money has the City of Charleston lost over the past month or so in your mind?
Well, it's not my mind that's the answer, and I don't have the world's greatest economic mind, but I read and I listen and I talk to people. I mean, we're getting hit. I mean, the hospitality industry alone, the projections are billions ultimately to this region. The medical district, as you know, the medical community is losing. It is significant, and the trickle-down effect and the across-the-board effect on that is dramatic. The hospitality industry being the prime example, but there are many others. There's lots of people out there who are hurting. But the hospitality industry has been gutted. I saw the other day when we get our reports at City Council, we get a report about how many hotels are open in the region. Right. And we first started getting the reports 25 days ago. It was about 96. Right now in the City of Charleston, there's 25 with an occupancy rate of about 10 to 12%. Now think about where we are today. We're in Charleston in April. Right. Last weekend was Bridge Run weekend. Right. This weekend was all sorts of things going on. High Water Fest, Charleston. So this is our prime time. So we are economically suffering across the board, and the city shares in that. I mean, we collect our revenues based on other people generating revenue, right?
Sure.
Property taxes are number one source of income.
Right.
Number two is business license fees based on sales.
Right.
And number three, parking.
Right.
There is essentially no parking going on right now in the areas where we collect revenues.
Right.
So we have taken an economic hit, and we've shared in the pain. Lots of people have, and we need to work together as a community to get back to where we were, recognizing. And I saw a comment somewhere that we need to learn resiliency in many different ways. We talk about resiliency when it comes to water, economic resiliency, and having a diverse economy. Certainly that's true, but we first have to tend to the economy that we had before all this started and make sure we bring it back the best we can. In the hospitality industry, in the medical community, those are great, robust economies and communities that we need to support any way we can and get them back up before we think about even further diversifying our community, our economic community. We've got to, again, solidify the community that we've got.
Good. Councilman Mike Seekings, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here. Look forward to continuing this conversation as we go forward. Lots to talk about.
I'll be
And I just
ready.
want to say to everybody out there, please, please, please stay safe, physically distance, listen to the numbers and listen to the leaders out there, and we'll get through this together, and we'll get back sooner rather than later, but not too soon.
Not too soon. Well, we'll be here when
Right.
everything's done.
Thanks.
Thank you.